Welcome, everybody. It's episode 86, and I'm Lisa Norell, coming to you live here from Virginia on July 12th. And oh my gosh, we have a lot to cover today. This is our summer edition. We're all getting back from our initial vacations. So let me give you some updates on what we're doing over here at the Energized Growth Team. And then we'll welcome our special guest to talk about how to fight fake news and protect your brand, because that's why all of you are here. The first thing I want you to know is when the weather cools down, we're bringing a cohort over to this beautiful place known as Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're going to really address a major challenge I'm hearing from so many of my clients between the ages of 35 and 70, which is our company has reached midlife. We are flattening out. How do we re-engage and reinvigorate our companies? And the second thing I'm hearing a lot is I'm a successful leader. I've kind of hit a place of either burnout or boredom. How do I reinvent myself? So together with 7-time New York Times bestselling author and CEO Chip Conley, we will be co-facilitating a session, The Midlife Innovator. We have 2 seats remaining. So if you are ready for reinvention, check out that link, bit.ly/click, CLIC 24 Santa Fe. Or just go to my website, to my blog, where you'll find the banner at the top, and you can read all about the companies who have confirmed the agenda and more. I have my boots ready. I've got my jeans ready. I am just beyond ready. The other clear thing, thanks to AI, is that being a growth leader, whether you're a VP of sales, a chief growth officer, a VP of marketing, it is getting to be a tougher and tougher job in the age of efficiency. And that's exactly why we built the Marketing Growth Leaders community. So we come together several times a year. Companies such as Alliance Bernstein, AARP, CoStar Group, Walker and Dunlop, Blackbaud, and many other mid-market companies. We come together to solve problems, share resources, and make space for innovation. So if you're looking for a community like that, call me, contact me, lisa@lisanorell.com, and we'll be happy to answer questions and set up a strategy meeting. Now, on to the show. Today's show, Fight Fake News, Protect Your Brand, it really came together because I know a lot of you care deeply about protecting your brand and creating a narrative that resonates with your audiences and is true for you. Unfortunately, with the advent of, as our guest calls them, pink slime news sites, it's getting harder and harder to protect your brand. It doesn't help that programmatic advertising throws your company ads into places that you cannot control. Your ad dollars may be supporting fake news sites and you don't even know it. And thanks to these inexpensive AI-generated content farms and news sites, they will scrape content from your website, from your white papers, and it's a free-for-all. We're seeing the lawsuits pop up and settlements popping up as well with the Associated Press and New York Times and a host of other tier 1 publications to try to protect the great journalism. So today we're going to try to tackle these issues. And I also want to give you context. Part of the contribution I make to the community is I want you to always hone and improve your critical thinking and strategic thinking capacity as leaders. And everything's changed. The way that you digest information, if you look at it through what we call the ladder of understanding that Marissa's going to show you a slide right now. The ladder of understanding shows us that at the bottom of the ladder, information as you know it is now a commodity. So no one is going to hire you for the information you bring to the party. Knowledge are table stakes at this stage. And you got to have knowledge where you synthesize information from disparate sources. The real competitive advantage, which we're teaching you today, is where you reach this ladder rung called wisdom, which is the marriage of knowledge and experience. And that's exactly why I am so happy that NewsGuard Enterprise Editor, Wall Street Journal contributor, and former Forbes reporter Jack Brewster is with us in the house today. So he's going to talk with us about what he learned when he was, I think of it kind of as a secret shopper of fake news sites. He's going to tell us a little bit about that. All of you received a link to his very popular article in the Wall Street Journal. So make sure you read that on how he built an AI-powered propaganda machine for $105. Your competitors can do the same. So Jack, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us today. Where are you today?
I'm in Connecticut, so the beautiful, serene background, with compared to what we're about to talk to, is definitely quite the distinction. I don't think I've ever been called a secret peddler of fake news sites before, but that's I guess I can get used to that title now. So,
Did I say peddler? Because I meant to say shopper. You were a
shopper,
shopper.
yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly, yes,
Yes.
both, I guess, in some ways, yeah.
Yes. Well, welcome again. You know, I've been reading tier one publications for more than 40 years. And again, because we want to give people context, tier one publications, the ones that for which you write, the models really started to shift for me personally around 2006
Mm-hmm.
when we saw Google purchase YouTube. When did you start to see things shift in how the market appeared and certain sources became rather specious?
Yeah, well, I think 2006, I would also say, was definitely an inflection point, but not necessarily just because of that acquisition. Also, the introduction of the algorithm on Facebook, which obviously led to other social media sites introducing algorithms, whereas before people would see posts in like reverse chronological order. Starting in about around 2006, Facebook introduced its algorithm, which fed people posts based on likes and shares. And that really upended kind of the way that people got their news. I mean, you can think of these social media sites as just being a modern version of a newspaper. And the introduction of the algorithm, which became more and more complex over time, and it was then introduced to Instagram, obviously, and then TikTok's algorithm is, one of the most targeted and coveted pieces of technology on the planet. Really changed the way that we take in information, but also the people behind it, who are the ones that are creating the most viral content on the internet. So,
Yes, we also talked about this and went down memory lane with the former CEO of Mansueto Ventures and Inc. magazine. And he was on our show about a year and a half ago. So people can also go back and reference that show by just going to lisanorel.com/events. And Eric Schurenberg certainly has also seen that, I'll say this succession of change in the media industry. How did you change after you wrote and did all that research on how to easily create a fake news site for $105? How did it change you personally and professionally?
well, I think journalists usually typically think of as being the ones covering what's going on, not necessarily what's trying out what they're covering. So I do think that's changed my perspective. I I do think that journalists in the digital age need to get their hands on these new technologies to be able to report on it and to understand it themselves. So, I mean, as someone covering AI, emerging technologies, and misinformation, I need to know how the sausage is made. And so, after I purchased this AI content farm, I got to see the back end, use it, and it was definitely illuminating, just in the sense that it showed me just how easy it was for anyone to create their own AI propaganda content farm for just nothing at all. And then the lack of expertise that you need. I know basic coding. I took one computer science class in college. That's it. And if I wanted to start my own content farm fake news empire, I easily could for just a few $100s. And I think that's what's shocking to me, is that we've really democratized the troll farm, so to speak. And that is pretty scary. It's also it can be a positive development, right? I mean, AI. I don't want to just demonize it across the board. Like this, obviously, these tools are being used for good, even when it comes to content generation. But the power of it and the speed at which they're innovating is really a call for concern.
And it's exacerbated by the fact that we are rapidly jumping into election season in the United States. And these news sites could become just, they could overpopulate like bunnies at this point. So how does it translate into the lives and the content and brand strategies of corporations?
Yeah, so I think corporations need to be ready for things to change on a dime. Our fractured media environment that we now live in means that it's harder and harder to predict how things are going to be covered and what the new misinformation trend is going to be. The speed and the velocity at which things can change now has increased. I mean, these are all things, misinformation, troll farms. These are all things that have been around for a while. What's changed is the speed at which misinformation and content, just in general, can spread. So, if I'm not covering this, and I'm trying to think about it as a business leader, I would be really concerned about the speed at which everything is changing, and I would do everything I can to prepare for things ahead of time, instead of being reactive. And I think if there's any theme of my talk, if there's one thing that you take away from all of my blabbering today, it's that pre-bunking is what we call it at NewsGuard, is really essential. And that's making sure that we have adequate information about the sources that we're getting our news before we encounter them. And I think that's just absolutely essential when it comes to any business leader today, is to really to be prepared before these things come up, because there's just no way to respond to them in real time that quickly. Like, there's no way to anticipate everything that could happen.
Tell us more, Jack, about a lot of the people who signed up today to join the live are chief marketing officers, heads of communications and brand, and content creators. So unpack for us, some people may not have grown up with that term. So help us understand, what is pre-bunking, and give us an example of people who do it really well.
I didn't grow up with the term. I think that's the thing, is like, these terms are having to generate in real time, just because we're also, as journalists, trying to respond to these things. I mean, the idea of fact checking has absolutely exploded in the last few years. But before 2015, 2014, it wasn't really thought of as being a dominant part of our information ecosystem. So I do think these terms are new. Anyways, getting back to what I said before, pre-bunking. Pre-bunking is the opposite of debunking, which is what most people think of as fact checkers and people covering misinformation and what they do, right? If a false claim is spread, journalists do research on it, call sources to debunk it and fact check it after it's been spread. Pre-bunking is the notion that people should have information about the sources that do spread misinformation, or have used emerging technologies, or weaponized emerging technologies like AI, so that they can respond to them quicker, right? I mean, a perfect example of this is when Elon Musk tweeted out a link to a conspiracy theory about Paul Pelosi in the aftermath of that heinous attack on him. What is it now? A year and a half ago. And the link that he cited was to this site called the Santa Monica Observer, which had previously spread false claims in the past. Now, Musk eventually apologized for spreading that that conspiracy theory about Paul Pelosi. But if he had knowledge about that source beforehand, maybe if he knew that it had spread false claims in the past, he may not have been as quick to push the button on that tweet. And I can't. I'm not in his head. He very well might have, but the point that here still stands that if there was adequate information about the millions of social media accounts, news sources, and websites on the internet, if we just had very basic information about them, like we do for news outlets, we could more adequately respond to things in real time. That's what pre-bunking is.
It almost sounds like corporations need to bolster and invest more of their budget in crisis communications professionals to learn and apply these skills, especially on the heels of some major product launches or big company announcements where competitors can really make a mess of things.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that right now with one of my technology clients is I will keep it anonymized. They spent $1 billion to launch a product,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been pretty wildly successful.
Mm-hmm.
They are unseating an existing competitor in the marketplace. And the competitor is now, guess what? Spreading fake news, creating and manufacturing press releases that are really specious at best. And, both of them are being distracted from the number one thing they should be focused on, which is their customers. Now they're focused on the attorneys. So it's really unfortunate. And I know that their crisis communications people are working overtime right now. So hopefully they're doing some pre-bunking.
Yeah, hopefully they're pre-crisis teams, not just crisis teams, right? I mean, it takes one TikTok post sometimes for these major brands. Starbucks has been a major victim over the last 6 months or so. Target was a huge victim of false claims last year during Pride Month. I mean, these things all came from usually just a few sources on either Instagram, X, or TikTok, and it just explodes. And it just takes one. It really just takes one viral post from sometimes not even that well known of a source. So that's the other thing, Yeah.
Yes. And I'd like to know how that links now to the work and the mission of NewsGuard. And because I want our audience to understand what resources are available to them to help preemptively avoid these problems.
Yeah, no, this is the one quasi sale pitch I'll do today, and that's NewsGuard is a company I've worked at for about 3 years now, and we have I have a really unique job, and that's we as an organization counter misinformation for readers, brands, and democracies, and the way that we do that is by hiring human journalists, yes, humans, to rate the reliability of 8,000 news and information websites. And so what we mean by that is we literally evaluate the content by article, searching by using keywords and things like that, but searching by literally down to the article and giving credibility scores for these 8,000 news and information websites. And so if people subscribe to NewsGuard, if they buy access to NewsGuard, they get access to this massive database of all of the great reporting that we have done on these news and information websites, also podcasts and TV shows. So it's journalists evaluating other news websites, and it's journalists who are checking these websites. It's nothing automated. People use our database to augment their technologies, including AI companies, but it's done using human journalists. And we also have a database of, I forget the number now, but many false narratives as well. So we not only track the reliability of news websites, but also every false claim from the 2020 election was stolen to like the smallest false claim that you can think of. So It's a unique company. It's been around for 5 years, and I'm really lucky to be a part of it.
And it's much needed. Please don't take this as a wise ass comment. It's really a curiosity comment. Why? Why aren't OpenAI, Google, Meta, and other media companies that are in the race to win the AI wars? Why are they not knocking on your door saying, we want to work with you and we want to fund your company?
I'm not on the business side, but we have had a lot of conversations with AI companies. So we are, I think their first priority has been their data sets. And then, our data would be used as to basically fact check the answers that they're giving. This area is so new still. I mean, we think of it as being so developed, but it's really only been around since 2022, the end of 2022. So I have faith that we'll make inroads in there. I mean, we're already being used on Microsoft's Bing AI chatbot. So we've made some inroads already, and I do think there will be other AI companies that are using NewsGuard going forward.
That's great, because we can't rely on them, especially certain companies like Meta, where a lot of their trust and safety people have been laid off. I have one client that has 29 million subscribers on their platform, and they are hiring many people who have been let go from places like the Washington Post and some of these other platforms where trust and safety got short shrift. So what you're doing is so needed. Now, again, because we are here and we offer a lot of advice and resources to our audience when they join us, how does your service, how would it compare to what the Associated Press is doing right now with their target to raise as much as $100 million for the AP Fund for Journalism?
AP Fund for so I mean, what we're doing is we're a for-profit company that hires human journalists to rate the reliability of sources. So we are really a database company that also does a lot of reporting on misinformation. We do a lot of work with media literacy. We work with schools as well, but we are a for-profit company and proud of it. And I think what we're doing is valuable to everyone from students to advertising companies to technology companies. So we occupy a unique space. I occupy even more unique space, the company being the enterprise editor, which means I do all of the reporting that comes off of all of this amazing research. So I'm almost like a middle point between a reporter, a researcher, which is an interesting space to occupy. But I think what we do, it differs just in the sense that while media literacy is a main function of what we do, it also is really helpful to businesses because, what business wants to have their programmatic ads showing up on a Russian disinformation site? What health company, what drug company wants to show up on some health site that's advocating for vaccine detoxes among kids? I mean, this is the stuff that we see. And the sad part is that advertisers 99% of the time don't even know that their ad is showing up there because programmatic advertising is shown to readers by algorithms, not by down to the website. So the fact that this is happening is often not known to these businesses. And that really is an amazing part, I think, of what we do, is that it combines media literacy with just good business, just practical business sense. Like, I don't want to, as a major Fortune 500 company, be showing up next to heinous misinformation and be indirectly funding the spread of blatant false narratives and misinformation.
That is an important hue and cry to everyone listening today to the show, for sure. Let's talk about the a day in the life of Jack Brewster for a minute. How often, since you've been there for a few years now, how much are you hearing from senior marketing executives, crisis communications people, brand executives who care deeply about your mission and want to get on board?
Frequently, and we have meetings with them, and that's definitely a unique space to occupy just as a journalist. Like, being somebody, I never thought that when I joined here that I would be sort of consulting in some ways, even though that's not what we call it. I mean, people are very curious about this stuff. They want to know more about misinformation, because this is not just a fact checking company. We really cover the world of misinformation and how it spreads, which I think is a great thing that we do. And a lot of business leaders just want to know. They're curious. They want to know what is going on in the world of misinformation. Who is spreading this? Like when Biden the other day, there was this conspiracy theory that took off on the internet that Biden had a medical emergency on Air Force One. The narrative took off even after he landed, and it showed that he was okay and he had emerged from the plane. But after the debate, on Crescent surrounding age, you can imagine how explosive that false claim was. That false claim came from a little known source on X with 12,000 followers connected to this like unknown conservative blog that nobody knows about. And I think people would be shocked to know that they see it show up on their feed, promoted by eventually promoted by some well-known commentator. But where does it come from? Where are these false narratives coming from? That's just one example of, thousands that we have. People want to know that, and business leaders want to know that, because at the end of the day, it can impact their business and their lives. So everyone really, I think, has a stake in this.
Yes, and we're going to dive into some, I'll call them pro tips at this point, because one of the pro tips that has saved me as a journalist, for some of the articles I've written for HBR and Fast Company and Forbes over the years,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that saves me is whenever, and I want every marketer and leader to do this, whenever you read an article, the first place I look, once I have absorbed their point of view and understand where they're taking me on the ride, the first thing I look at is the byline. Who do they work for? And then sometimes if I'm going to cite that article or that research, I go to their LinkedIn profile to see what's been their history here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, they have deep roots in ultra conservative political views, or, they used to work for this hedge fund and they are, extremely right-wing conservative or money managers, or, I want to understand their roots, because we're all humans and we all have biases, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And our media environment is so fractured too, right? I mean, the internet today is basically like if you walked into a library and the papers and books were just flying around in the air, and when you went to the librarian and asked them to help you find a book or a source, he or she just threw up her hands and said, "I have no idea. You just go find it yourself. Go dig yourself." So that's basically what the internet is like today. It's just a totally fractured landscape where people often don't really know what's coming up on their feed and why they're getting it, because social media companies don't give them access to that information.
Yes. Let's talk about some of the ways that you and I fight fake news and do our level best as leaders and as influencers to be as objective and fact-based as possible. Give me a couple of your strategies, and then I'll share some of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever I get this question, I usually go back to the same thing that I've said even before the onset of AI, which is that when you see something in one place, whether it be your family group chat or your TikTok feed or Instagram, and you feel a strong reaction to it, take it, copy the keywords, and plug it into Google. That is the most simple thing, but you would be shocked at how many people on an everyday life during their everyday lives do not do that. They say, "Did you see this? Did you see that? Where did you see?" The next question is, "Where did you see that?" I saw it on my feed. I saw it in my group chat. And the accessibility should not trump just basic due diligence. I mean, it is so freaking easy to take whatever story you see and plug it into Google and find out more about it. There is always news about whatever prominent topic that you want to know about. There really is ability to do research on it. So that's my first piece of advice. Second thing I think is to do some cleanup of the sources that you're following. I do this all the time. I make lists on X. I look at the sources that I'm following on Instagram and TikTok, and just cull them. And I see, okay, am I getting the news that I want to get? I mean, it sounds so basic, but people don't do that. We just accumulate now, after how many years of being on social media, hundreds, if not thousands, of people that we're following. And we don't even know who they are. I mean, people do this for their friends on Facebook that they don't care about anymore from high school. We should do it for our news sources. I mean, it sounds so basic, but people do not do that. And I think that's a really important thing to do. The last thing I would say is have a good media diet in general. I mean, it should be composed of multiple things on multiple different mediums, newsletters, podcasts, your web show. So I would encourage people just to have a diverse food diet, to have a diverse media diet. Challenge yourself with differing perspectives, and be curious. Be your own reporter. That's what the best part of the internet is, right? Is that we all can be our own journalists. It's also the worst part of the internet. Everyone can be their own journalists, like some people who don't deserve to be. But take that advantage. Be curious. Do your own research. There's so many things to discover about these things that you have a strong reaction to.
Yes, I'm going to give you a few too, because I want to build on these. The one you said there, copy the story, put it into Google search to find out the sources of that claim or story.
Yeah.
The other is the pre-bunking sessions that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The other is building a good media diet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I beg people, especially those of you who might be young professionals. I mentor a number of young men and women who are passionate about marketing, as I am. And I say, if you just take 5 minutes a day away from your looking at your Instagram and replace it with a tier 1 publication reading. I don't care if it's the Wall Street Journal, the Guardian, the New York Times, Financial Times. Please, just 5 minutes a day could change how you show up at work, and the way in which you are wiring your brain to think more critically.
Oh, your
as
attention
opposed
span. I
to
mean,
knee jerk.
yeah. No, I'm sorry to interrupt. Our attention spans are quite literally being shortened. That is not an exaggeration. And we've put ourselves through an experiment over the last 10 years with social media, giving phones to children. That is profoundly changing their childhood, going from play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood, as now many people are talking about. So I really encourage people to have a diverse media diet. Pick up a print news publication every once in a while if they're feeling overloaded and exhausted. It's exhausting to look at your news feeds on social media every day and get your news there. It's fun, but it's also absolutely exhausting. And I love it. But at the same time, I have to have breaks. I have to look at newsletters and long form things. Otherwise, I won't be able to think critically.
Name us one of your favorite long form writers. And as you're doing that, thinking about one of your favorites, I'm going to wait and give you one of my favorites. And then just so everyone knows, in the show notes, as well as in the chat, we're going to find 6 of these tips that we just added so that everybody can pick 1 or 2 or 6 that resonate with you. Jack, go for it.
I've been reading a lot of what Scott Galloway has been talking about. I mean, he's a professor at NYU. He's a very smart business mind, but he also talks about our changing media landscape and things like that. And he's a very creative thinker. He has a podcast too with Kara Swisher. Yeah, yeah, and he's just very good, I think, at getting his ideas out there. So I've been reading a lot of what he has to offer and watching a lot of his content as well as his podcast. So
You need to be on the Pivot podcast, Jack Brewster.
yeah, that would be wonderful. Maybe that's the next step. Yes.
It is. We need you out there. This is an important topic because in 7 or 8 years, my dream job is to be a full-time journalist because I am rooting for the profession to remain strong, relevant, and well paid. So there you go.
Me as well. I think it will change dramatically over the next years, but I think the need for journalists is stronger than ever. I really do. I think we need a lot of and young journalists too.
Every person listening, since my clients are corporate usually, every one of you who's in marketing needs to think like a journalist right now. So don't just think that I'm talking about a different profession. This is all about you as well. Every piece of content has to have this level of integrity. Jack, it was so much fun to spend time with you today.
It's a pleasure. I love talking about this with you. So thank you so much for having me on, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Please come back after the election when we've all gotten a little more gray hair, and
we'll do some completely white by then.
Yes, we're going to meditate together. We're going to meditate for peace in the world.
Yes.
And so come back again, Jack. We're going to share all of the resources in our show notes about NewsGuard, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa.
That wraps it up for us today, everybody. Make sure you grab those pro tips from the chat, which we are including here as well as on our YouTube channel. Was he a great guest or what? I'm so grateful for him. We're going to be sharing this show wherever you get your podcasts as well. So make sure you add the Mindful Marketer podcast to your favorites. And if you feel the love, my friend, an Apple podcast review. It means so much to me. That wraps up our summer session. And I really hope you walked away today with some very useful tips and strategies, because that's what we do here at the Mindful Marketer. Our mission has not changed, which is to help mindful market leaders cultivate healthy companies and careers. We're glad you're here and see you next time.